Welcome to Reach, your platform to connect with other executive assistants and acquire game-changing knowledge and perspective. Reach is designed to inspire your workday, guide you through pivotal moments in your career, and transform you into the executive assistant you've always wanted to be. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reach. I'm your host, Jessica Van, founder and CEO of Maven Recruiting Group, and I have Julia Menez in the studio with us today. Welcome, Julia.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Julia, for those who don't know about her extensive social media following, is an online travel and rewards points expert. She has an incredible social presence as well as a podcast that she runs that is fully dedicated to the ins and outs of all things travel. Given that so many of us in the EA space are ourselves experts in travel or asked to be experts in travel, we thought it would be an awesome opportunity to sit with Julia for a bit and pick her brain a little bit on the ins and outs of the world of points, the world of credit card points, the best ways to optimize airline miles programs and things of that nature. So today we'll be talking about how to really explore that world as a strategic advantage for both yourself and your profession, but also on behalf of your executive and your company, because who doesn't want to be a travel hero and save yourself and your company money and help your executive live better. So on that note, Julia, let's start with your story. How did you get into this space? What's your background? And what led you to form GeoBreeze Travel?
So back in the day, nobody majors in Instagram influencing or points and miles. I was an actuary. So deep math modeling in the insurance space, that's what I decided I wanted to do as my career when I was 14, and then studied that in college, did that for 9 years. And as an actuary, at some point you're done with certification exams. These exams take over your life, and at some point you're done and you have too much energy. So my husband suggested I get a hobby and gave me some personal finance blogs to read. And through those blogs, I learned about the magic of points and miles and different high rewards credit cards, where if you use certain credit cards, you can earn points, and you can use those points to save a whole bunch of money on business class and first class travel. And in the beginning, I thought that sounded like a scam, which is very common for most people who hear about it the first time. But we can dig into this a little bit more, but dug into the hobby, tried out a couple of cards, made a couple redemptions, got hooked from there. And then during the pandemic, we couldn't travel anymore. So just sitting at home, talking about points and miles all the time. And my husband was once again like, I think you need to talk to somebody else about this, like not just me, all the time. So I reached out to different points people on Instagram and asked, hey, do you want to just jump on a Zoom call and hang out and talk about points? And they said, not really. I mean, I don't know who you are. That seems a little bit weird. So I said, what if I record our conversations and release it to thousands of people on the internet, as though that's more socially acceptable? And they said, yeah, you're starting a points podcast. I would love to be featured. And I said, yeah, we're doing that. That is what we're doing. So that was the birth of GeoBreeze Travel, was just me trying to find people to talk to about points and miles. None of it was supposed to be income yielding, but here we are now with a bustling consulting business, helping a lot of business owners and high cash flow professionals to allocate their points creatively onto different cards and to maximize any points they have for luxury travel, about 90% off.
Wow, that's incredible. Are any of your clients executive assistants?
No, but quite a few of them have executive assistants, where our main point of contact is their assistant, who we train to know the ins and outs of the loyalty programs to book on behalf of their boss.
Perfect. That makes complete sense. And I also love hearing that you have an actuarial background, because I feel like you do need some kind of a mathematician level expertise and degree to figure out how to navigate these things. And I feel like for a lot of us, they're designed almost to be somewhat obtuse and inaccessible and really, really, really technical. So hearing that is, I think, somewhat reassuring and validating that it is complicated and it takes a mathematician brain to navigate it. So I'm grateful that we have your expertise for the next few minutes to walk us through that. So as we mentioned, executive assistants are often the ones managing travel, booking travel for their executives. So in your opinion, how can EAs become travel heroes by understanding the point system? What sorts of benefits are available? What sorts of opportunities exist by becoming an in-house expert on this?
So to be a travel hero, you really need to know, like deep down, the main objectives of your boss. So we've worked with a variety of different assistants to varying degrees of skills, where one just like had a Post-it note and she's like, he wants to ball out on Christmas. I'm like, what does that mean? Where does he want to go? What kinds of points is he okay with? What's the flexibility on travel dates? And they really don't know. Whereas the really good assistants know their executives inside and out of here's what they would prefer, here's what they would be okay with, because the more flexible a person is with their travel, whether that's dates, destinations, etc., the more deals we can find. So if somebody is saying, I have to be in Japan on a specific day for a meeting and I can only fly on this day on this flight, there's not a ton that can be done with points and miles. But if your executive is saying something more like, hey, my kid's spring break is this week, I have no idea what to do, like figure it out, use my points for the family of 4, that's where we can really shine, because then we know the dates. They don't really care too much where they're traveling, just maybe somewhere tropical or somewhere that's a city, or general vibe that we can work with. And if we know their points, we know what their home airport is, we can make a lot of great suggestions from there. So whenever we're working with an executive assistant, a lot of times the friction point is just because they didn't take the time to really get to know the travel preferences of their boss, or they know like their boss is very particular and needs to be here on a certain date, and they haven't communicated our side of it to their boss yet to say, well, how much flexibility do we really have? Because maybe the directive is I need to fly on September 15, and we say, we found a much better deal on the evening of September 13. Do you have flexibility to do that? It takes time for the EA to get to their boss, then to get back to us, and by then the flight deal is gone. So if the EA can just download all of the preferences into their brains and know their boss well enough ahead of time, so by the time they're getting to us, it's just a quick back and forth, and we're not waiting days to get that translation back and forth. That's how I would say step one of being a travel hero.
Okay, so that's a huge, very valuable, I think, takeaway number one, which is that you need to have date fungibility. And I think a lot of assistants in general, are really encumbered with that, right? They may not have that. So it does sound like, if there was sort of an outstanding desire to go to New York or an outstanding need to be in Frankfurt or whatever, and you have a little bit of flex there, that's when you can really, like you said, really, really shine. So good thing to note that don't come to you or to your resources if you have a hard and fast date.
It can be done. It will just cost a lot more points. So depending on what the priorities are, if it's, I want this super cool, great deal that I saw on Instagram, but it has to be a specific date, very difficult to get all of those stars to align. If it is, hey, I need to be here on a specific day, Amex portal is charging me 1,000,000 points, and that's what you're starting with, we can get it down for a lot lower than that. It's just not going to be the greatest deal ever that you happen to see on my Instagram.
Okay, got it. Now, on your website, you have links to a ton of different credit cards. I'd love to hear your recommendations for which credit cards do you think build the most loyalty, which ones are the most advantageous for travelers, and also, are there smart things that people can do to really squeeze the most value out of their points?
So I'll say the most advantageous / best credit cards to get if you are a business owner, so for whoever your EA is reporting to, if they just want a simple answer, Capital One Venture X for business, it gets 2 points per dollar everywhere. So if your boss is somebody who is like, I don't want to juggle a whole bunch of cards, or you as the EA is also in charge of bookkeeping and billing and handling all of the vendor payments and everything, and you don't want to deal with a whole bunch of cards, Venture X for business, 2 points per dollar everywhere. The points are pretty flexible. Just go with that. If you want to take it a step further, then different cards will have better points earnings on different spending categories. So let's say your boss sells a lot of digital courses. You spend a lot of money on ads. Maybe in addition to being an executive assistant, you're also in charge of media buying on the Meta ad side or something. There's a couple cards for this. Amex Business Gold will earn 4 points per dollar on ads online, up to $150,000 per year. So if the business that you're helping to manage falls in that bucket, you spend $100,000 or so on ads, Amex Business Gold, great card. If you guys spend a lot more than that, Chase Sapphire Reserve for Business gets 3 points per dollar on ads, but there's no cap on it. So those are a couple that you can look into depending on if you spend a lot of money on ads. If you are purchasing a lot of if you are purchasing a lot of travel for your boss, this is where I would recommend the free app Expensify and using some personal cards. And then just doing an expense report and getting it reimbursed through the company. If you have your own card and your boss will let you, you can earn a lot of points this way too. So Amex Platinum, let's say this. If you have to buy a lot of flights just in cash, not worrying about points, like they fly back and forth a lot and you're doing that purchasing on their behalf, go onto the Bilt travel portal. Bilt is spelled B-I-L-T. Use an Amex Platinum personal card to purchase the flights. You'll earn 5 Amex points per dollar plus 1 Bilt point per dollar. Those are all very valuable points. So 6 points per dollar plus anything they're earning on the loyalty side on the airline. And then just Expensify that receipt to get reimbursed by the business. That's how I would purchase flights. For purchasing hotels, Rove, which is spelled ROVE.com. You or your boss can get 1,500 free Rove miles by going to rovemiles.com/GeoBreeze because I have a partnership with them there. If you need to buy a lot of cash hotel bookings through there, go through Rove Miles, and then it'll be like booking direct with the hotel. So if your executive has status perks with Hyatt, Marriott, Hilton, IHG, any of those, it's still like you just booked direct, but now you get Rove Miles on top of it too. So those are a couple different ways where if you're just purchasing a lot of flights on somebody's behalf, I would use Bilt for flights, I would use Rove for hotels, and then whichever card you want to use on Rove is probably fine. Expensify it to yourself.
Great. And I mean, a lot of us just filed taxes because it's that time of the year. So correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a pretty easy tool when you have access to the credit card. There's that annual spending tool where you can actually click in and see what categories of expense did you contribute the most toward. And that might be a good way, given what you just shared, to figure out what type of credit card would be the most valuable for your particular executive.
For sure. There's also a free app called Card Pointers, which you can find in the App Store or the Play Store. And with that one, you don't need to give it any financial information or anything. You just physically type in, here's the cards we have, and then search for the category of expense that you guys put the most money on. And then from there, it'll say, oh, here's the card you have that you should use, but there might be an even better card that you can recommend that your boss apply for or that you apply for on their behalf. And then you'll earn even more points that way. So the free Card Pointers app is fantastic for that.
Wow, that's amazing. And I just want to underscore, too, for our listeners, that I think that a lot of times we hear feedback, especially now with AI and all these other things that are, quote unquote, big parentheses here, but cannibalizing some of the workflow of what EAs do. I think that what you're sharing with us today, Julia, is yet another opportunity to really provide excellence and to further differentiate yourself and your value. And, you know, if you can go to your executive offering them a cleaner, more elegant, better experience and simultaneously saving them significant money, if you're supporting a Series A founder, if you're supporting a seed stage company, right? Typically very financially cost conscious at this stage, and also probably not large enough of an organization to where they would have a travel agency or something like that already booked and have contracted rates. So there's a huge space and opportunity there to really insert value or to work with somebody like yourself and your company, your advisory, to do just that. So just want to double click on that point because there's so many ways to be a hero and provide value.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to the redeeming side of it, so we talked about how to accrue, right? When it comes to the actual redemption side of it, what are the best ways to use points? Do you find that you get more value in things like upgrades or premium cabin seats or luxury hotels? Like how do you, one, I guess, recommend aggregating them, and two, where do you get the most value in redemption?
The worst way to get value in redemption is the most common one, which is just to log into americanexpress.com or chase.com or capitalone.com and redeem directly through your credit card's website. Because you'll probably just get 1 point per dollar there. They make it really easy to just wipe statement credits and credit card credits off of there. So let's say that you have a $600 bill. You could use 60,000 points and wipe off that $600 credit. But if you learn how to use transfer partners instead, that would be better, because 60,000 points could get your boss a business class flight from the US or Canada over to Paris. So that's the high level answer. Is the worst way is to just start cashing out your points, use them to erase different expenses. The best way is to learn the different transfer partners. This is where our expertise really comes into play. If you want to learn it as a VA so you can do this on your own for your boss, great value add. We have tons of free tutorials on the GeoBreeze Travel channel, on the YouTube, on the Instagram. But yes, you'll want to learn about different transfer partners and alliances and everything there. I do not recommend using points for upgrades most of the time. It's going to be a lot better to just book the business class ticket outright versus purchasing economy and trying to upgrade with points. Some airlines make it easier to do that than others. Emirates notoriously is the one that was best for upgrading, but you have to wait until you're actually at the gate to try to upgrade from business to first class or something like that. And so in that case, your boss has to be okay with, what if I don't get upgraded? And there's a lot of unknowns in that situation. It's just better for everybody's peace of mind, especially with a lot of the executive types that we serve, if you just have your business class locked in with your points to start with.
So just to rewind for a second, because I think I'm the person that's guilty of using my points on the Chase travel site. So when you go to Chase Ultimate Rewards, what you're saying is don't redeem your points there, transfer them to an external, I think you said transfer partner. Can you elaborate more on what that is?
Sure. So your Chase points, they can be moved to lots of different airlines and hotel partners. Air Canada, British Airways, Air France, Singapore Airlines, Hyatt Hotels is one of the favorites, United Airlines. So that's where you can get a lot more value, is to move them there. However, the next mistake people do is they say, I fly United a lot. I should just move all my Chase points to United. Don't do that. Keep them in Chase until you see the redemption that you want, and then you say, okay, it's 80 or 80,000 points to fly over to Europe using United. Now I'm going to move my points from Chase to United just with the exact amount that you need. Book that ticket through United. And once you move them out to a transfer partner, you can't move them back. So only move them at the time that you need, and only when you physically see the availability of how you are going to use these points with that specific airline or hotel.
I love that takeaway. That is super duper duper helpful. I feel like I've been living life wrong this this whole time. So thank you for that. So we hear different opinions on the utility and value of travel services and travel agencies. Can you comment on that? I mean, when does it make sense as a company or as an executive assistant group or team to bring on a travel service, and when is it more optimal to just handle it yourself piecemeal?
Depends how much expertise the assistant team already has with travel, and also what else is on your plate. Where if you have to do accounting services, if you have to do client management for whatever the business that you serve is, it's probably better to just outsource it to a travel agency. So like with ours, we have a travel agent on staff where they're just paid on commission. So a lot of them, you don't have to pay them an additional fee in order for them to serve your boss. And because a lot of these executive types will spend a larger dollar amount on their vacations or on their travel, the travel agents are willing to take it on more versus somebody who's a budget traveler, because it usually takes just as much time on their side to book a Ritz-Carlton versus a Hyatt house, and their time per hour is going to be a lot more if they can work on these larger ticket items. So if you can find an agent like that, that'd be fantastic. For our consulting service, we do only have that service for people who are in our one-on-one client space, because again, we could get flooded with different requests for travel agent services, but because of that commission structure, it's worth it only if we're booking those really big yacht packages, cruise packages, safaris, etc. So I hope that helps a little bit of like, when is it worth it to outsource it? If you guys have a lot of travel that you are booking for your boss, there's a lot of travel agents who are willing to take that on. If you are doing a lot of points and miles bookings, it's just a different language to try to learn. All of the different alliance partners, there's so many things that go wrong all the time. Just because a flight exists doesn't mean it exists on points. And a lot of the game is really not necessarily conjuring the flights, but monitoring for when the good deal comes up. That can zap a lot of EA time really fast if you have to check every day of like, okay, my boss needs to go over to Hong Kong on this specific day. Did Cathay Pacific open up the flight deal he wants? No. Okay, check back tomorrow. It's better just pay somebody else like us to outsource that if there's lots of other things going on in the business, which I imagine most EAs have 1,000 tasks on their plate to deal with anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely correct. Travel, I think, is one piece of what an EA is responsible for, but it's certainly not the whole piece. Beyond what you've shared, are there any kind of like insider tips for securing upgrades or premium travel experiences? For instance, I'm making this up, but like, I've heard there's this myth of the Tuesday, right? Like booking on a Tuesday or things of that nature. Like, have you observed any sort of macro trends or benefits that you would direct our audience to trying out?
The Tuesday thing's definitely a myth. The worst day to book a flight is the day you need to find the flight deal. So plan ahead with that, because if you're trying to do this at the last moment, the universe will probably laugh at you and you're not going to find anything great on points and you're going to be overpaying, which a lot of the time is just how it is. If you have a last minute business meeting and you have to be somewhere at a certain day, like the price is what it is. Especially right now, the ecosystem of the world, as we record this, like a lot of the Middle Eastern flights are down just because of what's going on in the region. So everybody's having to route over the Pacific instead. If you're flying between like Asia and the United States, or like over to Europe, people are going over the Pacific or the long way around. And those flights are crazy expensive now on cash. They can be done on points, but availability is lower because everybody scooped them up. So worst day to book a flight deal is the day you need to find a flight deal. So another tip for EAs who want to learn this skill is practice the skill before you actually need to. We have tons of free tutorials on YouTube. You can just practice the muscle memory of how to search on Air France, how to search on the Japan Airlines award search calendar, how to find flights on different search aggregators, because there's lots of different tools that will aggregate these. And more importantly, how to find the flight deals that don't show up on those different tools and aggregators. So practicing ahead of time is going to yield leaps and bounds, much more than any quick tip like book flights on a Tuesday, which isn't even a real thing. But it is, if there is something that's like seems so easy and so catchy like that, it's easy for everybody else. So it doesn't add that much additional value. The additional value you add as an EA service is going to come down to what can you do that AI can't, or that like Google Flights can't easily do, and how to really leverage these tools in your favor versus depending on them. For what it's worth, right now, AI is terrible with finding points and miles deals. There are great tools that are not AI. They're like automated, or they can set up notifications or something else. But also just like knowing the difference between AI and like automating tasks that you would just need to do is a very important topic that I'm sure you have other episodes on.
Yes, we certainly do. So in your experience, when a person has booked their travel using one of these alliance partners or utilizing a point system, does it make changes to itineraries more difficult or more inflexible? Because as we know, executive assistants are often, beholden to last minute changes on behalf of their executive.
It does not make it more difficult to make last minute changes, but it can make it more expensive to do so. To get around this, I prefer to book using the US based systems for people who have this type of travel where you have to change it multiple times or change it at the last minute. United, American Airlines, Alaska Airlines, those are all great programs to study and look at our tutorials for. Sometimes you'll find the flight deals through another program like Air France, which if you have to change it will cost you €80 per ticket, or Qantas, which if you have to change it will cost you like 5,000 or 6,000 Qantas miles. I've spent so many miles on Qantas, not actually taking flights, but just from changing up my different ticketing. Same with like the British Airways Avio system, there is a bit of a cancellation fee. So it's not so much does it make it difficult to change, it's just you have to keep in mind there will be fees associated with changing your mind back and forth. And that's not as much of a thing with the US airlines. The US airlines do oftentimes charge a little bit more in the points price up front, but makes up for it in flexibility.
Interesting. And I'm curious as well, your expertise, does this extend to the realm of private aviation? I mean, do you have, at your advisory firm, do you also deal with private jets?
Not really, because they just don't have points and miles programs that can be done.
Sure.
There are different tangential things that we've found around this. So for example, with the build program, especially if your boss is like a landlord and they have a whole bunch of tenants paying them rent, first of all, have them recommend Built to their tenants. They're much more likely to get paid on time. But also for anybody who is paying rent, not commercial, just residential or mortgage now, if you have points through the Built system or you get the Built personal card, I like the Palladium one, and then you get to the Platinum tier, you get a free Blade ride every year. And so Blade, it's not a private jet company, but it is like a helicopter transport from either Newark or JFK into Manhattan. Or they can also do this in France, where you land into Nice airport and they can take you either into Monte Carlo or down to Kent. So there's like tangential things that you can do around this. My favorite semi-private is JSX. They don't have a great loyalty program right now, but I think you can credit the miles over to United. So that's another thing where if every time you are booking your boss some flights, make sure there's a loyalty number tied to it so that they get their status credits and everything. A lot of these executives are really, really into protecting their status. If it's like executive platinum with American Airlines or Delta Diamond or whatever, they're really into status. Another thing that you could do is maybe see what other statuses they can get, because if you already fly a ton with one airline, you have status with one program, it's a lot easier to get status with other programs, either by linking programs like Hyatt and American Airlines you can link, or there's a free website newsletter called statusmatch.com. And so you just let it know, hey, here's my name, email, the statuses I already have, and they will email you proactively whenever there's a status match available, where maybe if I have American Airlines executive platinum status, they'll let me know, hey, you can match over to Vietnam Airlines or something with SkyTeam. And a lot of EAs are like, well, is that useful? My boss is never flying to Vietnam. But that's where the alliance partners come into play as well, because if you have status then with multiple airlines, then maybe you get priority boarding or like easier customer service, free baggage with more airlines. And so let's say my usual go-to is American Airlines, but they just don't have anything on the route that I need to fly, so I need to get Delta. Having a little bit of SkyTeam status might be very helpful for that. Same with if I see something with maybe Lufthansa, which is with Star Alliance, so that is a United partner. If I get a status match with Lufthansa and back home I need to fly United because my American Airlines flight isn't available, I get a United lounge access at that point. So that's a couple different ways that you can coordinate your boss's travel as an EA, where you're like, hey, I know your first choice airline isn't available. We got you this other one. Don't worry, you still get your free bags, you still get your lounge access, you do all that, because we worked it out with statusmatch.com. That's another like EA hero thing. That's probably at least a moderately low-hanging fruit if you just sign up for the newsletter.
So, and forgive me if you've already answered this and I just haven't quite wrapped my head around it, but Is there an easy way to see which partners are affiliated with who? So as you mentioned, all of these partners have kind of affiliate partners. So how can you know that in advance?
So affiliate partners, separate from airline alliances. We'll start with airline alliances first. For that one, I would just go to Wikipedia, look up the 3 main airline alliances and see who all is in each alliance. That's step 1. But just because, let's say, Singapore and United are in the same alliance doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I found a good Singapore Airlines flight over here, I should be able to book it through United. There are varying degrees of which that is actually available to you and the points and miles community as a whole versus degrees to which it's just not available at all. Like Singapore Suites, you kind of just have to book through Singapore's own website. You can't book it through another Star Alliance partner like Air Canada or United. It hasn't been available that way in a long time. But to start to familiarize yourself with the alliance partners, I would just go on Wikipedia. For affiliate partners, like who can link to who, I am not aware of a good central location for all of these deals, just because they're constantly changing and new partnerships are constantly coming about. This is where just following different points people on Instagram, following different points blogs can be very helpful, because these are the quick hit tips that people are constantly making content about anyway, of make sure you link your Hyatt and your American Airlines accounts, make sure you link up Uber and Marriott, make sure you link up Starbucks and Delta, make sure you link up Hilton and Lyft or Built and Lyft. So there's a ton of these different collaborations, we'll call them, between different loyalty partners. And that one, I don't know of a good central repository for it. I would just follow your favorite points people.
Yeah, just follow you basically. But I think one of the first things you said in our program today was you said it starts with knowing your executive. And I think that I would go back to that and revert to that, because it sounds like a lot of what you're describing really hinges on lifestyle and really hinges on you knowing them. So you mentioned Starbucks just now, right? So if you happen to know that your executive is a 2-cup a day Starbucks patron, right? I mean, looking into things like that there may be an affiliate program that they could really, leverage things like that. Again, knowing their spending habits, knowing the business's spending habits. What is the bulk of the business spending? What category is that in? Things like that. And from there, really unraveling what would make sense. Are they a loyal, Hyatt guest? Do they always prefer to stay in Hyatts wherever they go? Are they more of a Ritz-Carlton? And then from there, really backing into what would make the most sense. So I stick to that as a really important takeaway in all of this, and it's always about centering your executive. So tell us a little bit more about, for those of our listeners who may be interested in partnering with you, tell us a little bit more about what that engagement looks like. Can they work with you on a one-off basis? When and where would it make the most sense for them to potentially reach out to you for support?
So there's a couple different ways we can do this. If you're already a dedicated EA to an executive and you're like, I think my boss would be really interested in this, have them check out this podcast episode first of all, but also have them or schedule a call with them on geobreezetravel.com/intro call. We prefer to take that call / we require to take that call with the actual executive, not the executive assistant, just so that we don't have to go back and forth on that translation piece. But we have had those intro calls. It's free, by the way. Where both the EA and the executive is sitting there discussing, okay, here, how would this engagement work? So that one is more one-on-one, where we get all of your travel goals, all of your different preferences, your points and miles balances, and then we make recommendations from there on credit card strategy, redeeming any points you already have banked up. We have so many executives where they're like, yeah, I've just been running my business through my American Express card for the last whatever years. I've got a few million points banked up. No idea how to use it. Can you teach my EA how to book some stuff for me? And we do that. So that's if you already have an executive who might be interested in this in like a one-on-one capacity, where we either train them or we train you to book everything for them. That's option 1. Option 2, let's say you are an EA who wants to build up this value set so that you can then pitch yourself over to different executives and be like, I am an EA with points and miles expertise. I would recommend more of a DIY coursework type of situation. So we have a course called the Points Accelerator. It's more marketed to hobbyists really, who are trying to level up their own points and miles just to book their own family on travel, but very, very applicable also to anybody in the executive assistant space, where you can learn how to book points and miles just for yourself. Possibly if you work remote anyway and you're logging in remotely for your executive, then you can just book your own nomadic journeys that way. But also then, as you are going through interviews and as you are applying to different roles and pitching yourself, you can say like, hey, I have this additional skill set as a value add where I understand loyalty programs, I understand how to book stuff with points and miles, how to allocate your business expenses to different cards. And people who are already tangentially in this space, as far as the executives, they'll know when you speak the language of points and miles and loyalty and status versus when you don't. Because that's a whole nother thing, is we can easily tell, those of us in this space, if somebody was trying to apply to be my EA and they're like, yeah, I've totally done United First before, and the Jennifer Garner cards are great. I'm like, okay, like we've got a little bit of a bridge to gap here. Whereas if you can really smoothly speak the language of points and miles, it helps on every facet because you can ask their preferences better while knowing what's possible and what's not. If you engage a service like ours, we can easily answer your questions better if the questions are worded properly. If you are trying to use just AI tools or something like that, not necessarily to find points deals, but just to get a better idea of what's possible, it's so important for an EA to be able to ask questions the correct way, instead of just like, what are the best points deals? To say something like, hey, Google, how come if I'm trying to move stuff over to Japan Airlines, like I can't ticket it all the way through? Oh, I realize now I have to book it in 2 separate tickets and then like do a married segment type of situation. Just knowing the language of points and miles and loyalty programs really will set you apart if you're trying to find an additional skill set that honestly AI is not good at right now.
No, that's great to hear. And just all the things too, like the lounge access and all of the kind of like fringe elements that come with access. I feel like that there's just a huge opportunity there to, to figure all of that out. And again, like to be a hero, like there's nothing more taxing and draining than being on an 24-hour trip somewhere around the world, being stranded, not being able to enter, a lounge, things like that. And the way they gatekeep that access too is like crazy. Like, like you would think they were serving filet mignon in there, like it's crazy how exclusive they make those things. So I think I love that encouragement of just really taking it on as an onus and as, your personal mission to really, become an expert in this and a travel hero. And also for the personal assistants that we work with and the people who do a lot of personal support for their executives, which is many of our executive assistants, this is all super duper useful for scheduling and booking on the personal side. So lots of great ways to add value. So it does sound like they can work with you on a more piecemeal basis, or is it like a monthly retainer, or it could be both?
We have lots of different packages that we can customize for people. If your executive is interested in this, I would recommend just going to geobreezetravel.com/intro call, ask them when they're available to take a call. We can put something together for them from there. Option 2, you're interested in just learning this for yourself. We have a DIY course called the Points Accelerator, currently closed for enrollment, but if you want to go to geobreezetravel.com/waitlist, we will let you know as soon as we reopen for enrollment.
Wonderful.
And we can coupon codes from there.
Great. Well, I have a final question for you, Julia, and that is, I guess, twofold. If you could only fly one airline for the rest of your life, and let's say you're, not a luxury traveler. Let's just say you're a regular schmegular budget traveler, regular person, and let's say you could only fly one airline for the rest of your life and you're looking for a really elevated luxury first class type of experience. Which airlines would you select in both of those instances?
Am I imagining that this airline flies whatever route I want, even though that's probably not how it actually exists in the real world?
Yeah, let's base it more around kind of flexibility, quality, reliability, experience. So yes, let's just assume they go anywhere in the world you want them to go.
I hope Qatar. opens back up a lot of their stuff. I really like Q Suites. I really enjoyed my Qatar first class experience. Waffle Lounge in Doha. I had this amazing dessert. I don't even know what it was called. It was like a knufe type of thing, but that was the best lounge in the world. My husband and I set up residency there for about 13 hours. They have nap rooms. They have like these hotel rooms that you can sleep in for 6 hours, and it has like an in-suite bathroom and everything else there. So Qatar was fantastic. A few different runner-ups for first class flights that I have flown. Emirates first class, really good. In addition to the lay flatbed and everything else, they give you Bulgari amenity kits, pajamas. You get to shower on the plane if you're flying the A380. I've done Cathay Pacific first class. That lounge is probably the second best in the world, right after Al Safwa. All of these give you pajamas and really nice amenity kits. I am excited to fly Etihad's The Residence next year, knock on wood, with my husband. So with that one, you have 3 rooms at the front of the plane. You have the bedroom. You also have your own bathroom. You also have like a little living room area with Etihad. So these obviously have very small, a selection of routes. Like I'm not going to be able to fly this from Las Vegas to Dallas or anything, but in our imaginary world, if these flew anywhere, these are some of the best flights in the world. Singapore Suites, double bed in the sky. Singapore is one of the best airlines in the world as well, and all of these have incredible service. So if I could fly a bunch of different first class flights all the time, these are the ones I've experienced that were so good.
Wow, sign me up. Okay, what about for the budget, regular, schmegular people? Which airlines do you like for them?
JSX. I don't know if that really counts as budget or regular, schmegular, I think is the word you use. But it's semi-private within the United States. And like sometimes they are very comparable in price with other economy flights. So I flew them from Las Vegas over to Salt Lake City once. There's only 30 or so seats on the plane. You show up to the airport hangar. It's a private hangar, usually off to the side of the airport, 20 or 30 minutes before your flight. You don't have to deal with all of the TSA nonsense. You can bring your dog if you want. And it's not that much more expensive. So they have limited routes, usually in the Western United States, where I think they fly between the New York and Florida quite a bit. But JSX, probably my favorite of the domestics.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've had good experiences with them too. Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been a lightning round of information. I definitely feel like we're going to need to listen to this 2 or 3 times to really absorb all that you've shared. But really appreciate your incredible knowledge and all this enrichment and material that you've created as well for the community. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Reach is brought to you by Maven Recruiting Group, who specializes in placing executive assistants and support staff to the Bay Area's most prominent executives and companies. If you've enjoyed being part of our podcast community and are interested in becoming part of our candidate community, we're currently hiring for roles in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Los Angeles. You can visit us at www.mavenrec.com to see some of the roles we're currently working on and to submit your resume.